My name is Kristen McDonald. I am the Mobilisation and Engagement Manager at Rewiring Australia. And I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we're all meeting on today. Today, I'm on beautiful Dharawal land and I pay my respects to their elders past and present and acknowledge the incredibly important role of caring for country. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on our Electric Ideas webinar. This is the latest in a series of talks about the why and the how that we need to electrify everything. Well, we at at Rewiring Australia, we're calling on governments and industries to do more to help every single Australian electrify. There are many of us who are getting on with the job ourselves. I'm constantly inspired in my own role by all the people and the communities who are overcoming some of the challenges and trying to support others to do the same. Part of our work is to ensure that we can all benefit from shared learned experiences and by working together, which is why I'm absolutely thrilled to have two knowledge sharers here today. Today, we are joined by electrification advocate Sarah Aubrey and electrician Brendan Lang, who will help demystify household electrification and offer their practical tips. Before we actually get into it, just one little bit of housekeeping. We're going to have a conversation between Sarah and Brendan for about 30 minutes. I'm then going to open to some questions from the audience. So if there's something you'd like us to talk about, if you'd like to put a question to Sarah and Brendan, please put it in the chat. Rewiring Australia's comms manager, Caitlin, she's going to be moderating the chat. We'll hopefully get to as many as we can. For those we don't get to, we'll record and we'll try and answer them in another format. So great. Well, let's get started. My first speaker today is Sarah. So Sarah Aubrey, she runs a very popular social media and YouTube channel called Electrify This, which I'm a subscriber myself and a big fan. Sarah said that after reading our co-founder, Dr. Saul Griffith's book, The Big Switch, she decided it was time to actually act herself. So with a firm belief that all actions, no matter how big or how small they are, can make a difference, she set about getting an energy rating for her own home. And she managed to upgrade her 115-year-old home from a 2.9 star energy rating to a whopping 10-star efficiency rating in just 2 months. So we have a lot to learn from Sarah, and she's going to tell us a bit more about how she electrified her home and what differences she has noticed. So thank you very much, Sarah.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me, by the way. Yes, so as Kristen said, I took my home from a 2.9 star freezing cold house to a 10-star home. We got the house assessed essentially in October 2022, and from there I'll just give you a little rundown about what the house looked like at that point. We had instantaneous gas. We had an unflued gas heater in our lounge room, which we'd use in the evenings. We had a gas stove. And we also had a 15-year-old reverse cycle ducted air conditioner, which was very much at the end of its life. So yeah, we were using about 42 kilowatt hours a day in winter, which is pretty shocking. And so basically I thought the biggest thing I wanted to achieve was to get off gas. And then by doing that, I would be able to draft proof the house properly and do all those things that really will make the house perform better, including increasing insulation in the house. So the most important thing I found about the entire process was getting the house assessed gave me some short and long-term plans. So I sort of assessed that and went, okay, well, where do I start? And I knew that we had very ancient blow-in insulation in our roof. And even though probably bang for your buck, putting in roof insulation is probably the quickest thing you could get in terms of instant results, I actually left that till last because I thought there's going to be heaps of electrical work happening in the roof. Things like solar, running the circuit, the brand new circuit from the electrical board all the way to the new induction stove that we put in for the heat pump, a ceiling fan. There was a whole bunch of sort of things that I thought, if I put in that blow-in, it's just going to get so disturbed. So I left that till last. And I couldn't put in underfloor insulation until I pulled the ducted insulation out and then filled up those vents with, replaced them with floorboards. So there was sort of a process essentially that I went through to kind of go, okay, if I do this, I can then do that. And it's things like draft proofing, even though that's probably the cheapest thing you can do and has massive results, and you can do that yourself for very little money. You can't close up those vents, those internal vents in your house, until you get gas out of the inside of your home. So actually, I prioritized getting rid of the gas stove. And because it was summer, I just got rid of the gas heater, didn't need that anymore. We still had gas, hot water at that point, but that didn't affect the inside of the house. So I prioritized essentially upgrading our exhaust fan because it was broken, so that we would duct all smells to the outside of the house, which of course you want once you close up those vents, and putting in that new lovely glass induction stove. And once I did that, gas was outside of the inside of the house, if that makes sense. And I closed up all the vents and went around, and I didn't realize that our fireplaces were open. So I went through and blocked all of those up. And that already made quite a big difference when I did that. Then we got rid of the ducted air, and at the same time put in 4 really energy efficient reverse cycle wall splits. And that means you just heat and cool the rooms that you're in rather than the entire house. And then that meant I could do the underfloor insulation. And we also did at around that time as well a ceiling fan, because it was summer, a ceiling fan in our bedroom, which is actually my favorite thing that we did. And then what else? Then we did the heat pump, because I thought, right, that was the last gas thing. And I thought, I can't stand this. I need to get rid of that heat pump. So yeah, running the circuit to that. And then last but not least, we did the roof insulation. So yeah, it was kind of a process. And I think every home is different in terms of what you should maybe do first, but just really think about what you're going to do in terms of, if I do something, is it going to get messed about with and potentially undo it? You know what I mean? So I think that's yeah. And basically, I've got a chart here if you want to bring that up. It's showing 2022 and 2023, a whole year. And this just demonstrates the results, essentially, which is that in 2022, we were using, as I said, 42 kilowatt hours a day. That's that big lump there on the left-hand side. That's winter, which is shocking. That's truly shocking. Like when you see those bills that 5 people use like 20 kilowatt hours a day roughly in winter. But that's what we, worst case scenario. And we're a house of 2 people and a dog. And then that lump on the right-hand side is 2023, and we're using from the grid 12 kilowatt hours a day. So we're now essentially using a quarter of the electricity from the grid, purchasing a quarter of the electricity that we're used to. And that is a fully electric house with energy efficient appliances with insulation. That's how it's performing.
Wow, that's inspiring stuff, Sarah. I love to see graphs like that. It really just, putting the data behind actually our sentiments is so useful. Have you also noticed a reflection in your energy bills? Has there been that sort of similar kind of decline that's matched the energy use decline?
There's an instant saving because we no longer have a gas bill. So we used to, in 2022, we spent $900 a year on gas. And of course, gas has gone up. How much has gas gone up? So let's say, even if it was 20, 30%, I think it's even more than that. It's probably about $1,200 now, roughly, we would be spending. So that's an instant saving straight off the bat. I would say we're saving about over $2,000 a year, just immediately. Even though electricity's gotten more expensive, we're using far less of it. So, and we're really conscious. When the sun is shining, we put things on and use the solar. We use the energy that we produce. And we don't have a big solar array. It's only 4.6 kilowatts. So yeah, it's an immediate thing. So that stuff starts to really pay for itself much quicker than you probably anticipate.
Absolutely. And that's ongoing savings as well. That's something that we really like to think about, because the cost of gas and other fossil fuels is going to keep on increasing. It is inflationary. But once you're putting on solar and you're using those efficient electric appliances, you're actually bringing that cost savings down, but in a permanent way. So year on year, you're saving that, you'll be saving $2,000, which sounds nice and handy, roughly a year. So That's fantastic. I'm sure people have lots of questions for Sarah. We are just going to kind of move on to Brendan, and then we'll do more of an open Q&A session for both or either. And as I mentioned at the beginning, if you have any questions for Sarah or Brendan, if you want to actually point a question to one of them, please just put their name in. If you're happy for either to answer it, then that's fine too. So just chuck them in the chat that Caitlin's keeping an eye on. But thank you, Sarah. Really loved listening to that, and a really inspiring work. I'm now going to introduce Brendan Lang. And firstly, I would like to say that Brendan Lang gets extra points tonight or today, because it is actually 3 a.m. where Brendan is calling from. He's calling us from the UK, and he's very kindly set his alarm and woken up to be here tonight. So if everyone can just give, a round of applause and a big cup of coffee to Brendan, then I think,
well done.
Yes, I'm very impressed. So thank you. So Brendan is an electrician. He's the founder of a company called Get Off Gas in Victoria. And as a keen environmentalist, Brendan is motivated to help prevent the climate catastrophe by accelerating the transition to electric buildings and transport, and also reducing rent costs for people and improving their livability. Brendan has a strong focus on educating homeowners and tradies to ensure they make great decisions. So Brendan, you're a tradie who drives a Tesla. I like to remind everyone I love that about you, among many other things. So please, could you tell us a little bit about the work that you do to help homes get off gas, and what you think are some of the common challenges and solutions that you're coming across?
Sure. Thanks, Kristen, and thanks Rewiring Australia for having me on board for today's webinar. Very excited to share some of my learned experience as an electrician and keen electrification advocate. So Get Off Gas is a company that I founded about 18 months ago, and we offer expert guided solutions to fully electrify your home, from the initial design, consultation and advice through to the installation, and then the forward maintenance programs to look after all of your different appliances as you swap them over. We've got a really strong education focus, so we're telling homeowners how they should be going about these changes and really informing them of the fundamentals behind those decisions, so that they can have confidence in the way that they're spending their hard-earned money to make these changes. We all know it's not exactly the cheapest thing to do, but if you can align the right technologies for the right scenarios and make sure you're accessing all of the rebates available to you, then it can really help to bring down the cost of these changes. Another thing that Get Off Gas is really keen to focus on is the education of tradies, and to help bring up the whole level of the information that's being broadcast out there to customers. So as part of that, we've got an education program that'll be launching later in the year, which will just be helping upskill tradies to make really good decisions in the advice that they're giving, so that customers and the homeowners can then make good decisions as well. A lot of tradies have got a knowledge gap. They might have done their qualifications many years ago, and they're trying to absorb this information as homeowners are, and it's just as difficult for tradies out there to be across all of the latest technologies. So through my Instagram and our training platform, we're trying to make sure that all the homeowners out there are getting the best possible advice that they can. I'll touch briefly on the Tesla. So I had a Volkswagen Amarok dual cab, which was my work ute for 6 years, and I was looking to move into an EV, and I just was waiting for the electric utes to come, and they weren't coming. I went and looked at some vans, but I really needed a vehicle that was going to be good for the weekend as well. I like to get out with my family, so I need 5 seats, go out mountain biking with friends, things like that. So a van wasn't really a good option for me. I didn't want a vehicle that was just had a single purpose and would sit in the garage for a couple of days every week. So I started looking in the passenger vehicle market, and the Tesla Model Y just ticked all of the boxes. Surprisingly, it's actually got more storage in it than my Amarok did, and it's even more capable. So it saves me about $7,000 a year in fuel costs alone, because I plug it in each night in my garage, and every morning I get in, it's back up to 100%. and away we go. There's also no servicing needed for the vehicle each year, so the car's not off the road for a couple of days, getting different bits and bobs fixed up. So that's a great thing for a business as well. And we'll be looking to add more electric vehicles to the fleet over the coming year or so. Hopefully, we'll get some options for some more light commercial vehicles. Onto electrification of homes. So yes, there are many challenges. I'm sure that many of the viewers and the participants out there can appreciate that it's not easy to navigate the process of fully electrifying a home. Like with Sarah's house, some of the homes we live in are very old and were built before there even was electricity. Then they've gone through a progression of having, one light in each room, to one power point in each room, and now we need power points in every corner of every room, or we can't possibly charge our phones when we need to. And then that extends through to all of the other electrical components of the house, and the appliances particularly that are fired by gas traditionally, because it was cheap, readily accessible, and the knowledge of the science of the damage it was doing just didn't exist. So that's why we all thought it was a great idea to just fill the house with gas. Coal was killing people, so they stopped using coal to heat the house. Let's move to a gas furnace or a gas ducted heater. And it all seemed like a good idea at the time. And as with many things in life, smoking and the like, we learn more and we adapt. And now it's time for the home to adapt and become fully electrified. The challenges, some of the challenges briefly that I'll touch on are the space available within a home. So some of these electric appliances are quite large. Air conditioning units need to sit outside. So if you haven't got a lot of outside space, there has to be some creative thinking about getting air conditioners and the like up off the ground so that you can still use your limited outdoor space up onto a roof, something like that. Many homes have got a side of the house where all the appliances can kind of sit, but some people don't have that. So it's really takes a tailored approach for each home so that you can come up with the right solution. Electrically speaking, many homes have already got the correct power supply that they need to become all electric. In my experience, maybe 10 or 15% will require some sort of upgrade to their existing supply to facilitate having an all electric home. A little bit technical here, but there's a single phase and a 3-phase supply. You don't know which one you've got until you start going down this journey. Both are more than suitable for having a full electric house. I myself live in a 2-story townhouse, and I've got a single phase 40 amp supply, and that allows me to run 4 reverse cycle split systems, an induction cooktop, a heat pump hot water system, ceiling fans, an EV charger, and 6 kilowatts of solar. So there's no problems with that at all. So don't feel like not having 3-phase is a barrier to any of those appliances. You just have to make sure that you're aware of what supply constraints you may have to begin with, so you don't go out and buy a whopping big induction cooktop that can only be connected to 3-phase and find yourself in a sticky situation where you're calling up your local Harvey Norman or ENS Trading or Bingley and saying, oh, can you please take back this appliance because I didn't read the fine print before going ahead. So we find that that's a really big part of the process in electrification, is coming up with that holistic overview of where the house is at now in terms of its appliances and where we're going to get to, and then figuring out the prioritization of those changes, both financially and then physically, what's going to be done best in the right order, as Sarah touched on, waiting until you get all of the ceiling work done before you get your ceiling insulated, because tradies have got a somewhat notorious reputation of pulling insulation out of the way so they can get their work done and then not putting it back together because they're just getting out of the space. And we always the insulation is one thing, but you'll go up on your roof and you'll find a few tools up there as well, because tradies are just keen to get out of the roof. They'll leave their screwdriver or their torch or their hammer up in the roof. So the insulation is the last thing that they're often worried about or conscious of, because they're not aware that a very small gap in your ceiling insulation can undo a lot of hard work. So thinking about staging things out in the right order is certainly very important. When you're looking for tradies to help you with these changes, just ask as many questions as you can and find someone who fills you with confidence that they know what they're talking about, that they can talk to you about the rebates off the top of their head. They don't go, oh, I'm not really sure about that, I'll have to come back to you. You know, you want someone who is experienced in the field. And if you don't get that out of the first person you speak to, just keep calling. Eventually, you'll get onto someone who can help you out and help you get the best decisions as you go through this process.
Great, thank you, Brendan. I would love to see the look at some of the work sites you might rock up to in your as the tradie in their Tesla. And I noticed someone in the chat commented, Nick commented that in France you can actually have the receipts removed, and so it becomes a bit of an electric ute for the tradies in France, which I think is even a nice idea to get some more space. So good on you. That's and I absolutely really applaud you on your work with tradies, because we like to think at Rewiring Australia that tradies can be the heroes in this electric transition, and often they're one of the most influential points that someone has in terms of the decisions that they're making. And as you say, some may not be as adept in knowing what the latest information is, and that knowledge is really crucial. So well done on taking a collaborative and supportive kind of industry approach. That sounds fantastic. I'd love to hear a bit more about that. I'm going to open up to the audience soon, but I just have one question each for you. If you guys can bear with me one sec. And Sarah, I'll go back to you. And I really valued the kind of looking at the overall picture of your whole house, and the impact that's gone from, the last year's energy usage to this year's. If obviously not everyone may be in a position to do all those things at once, and you did talk about kind of stage gating it a little bit, but if you could reflect on your experience, or even the work that you've done with all your videos and research, what do you feel like has been kind of one of the most effective upgrades that you've made, if you were just kind of going to narrow it down to one or two? And what sort of advice would you give to someone who either wants the most bang for their buck, or they just want to get started and have sort of, a key impact? What sort of tips or thoughts would you say to that?
Probably biggest bang for your buck in terms of it costs the least, but you'd have immediate results, would be the draft proofing. Even if you're not closing up those vents, putting things like weather strips under your doorways, lots of people on your external doors, right? Curtains, cover those windows up. Lined curtains with a pelmet are on the scorecard assessment. It's like double glazing, and those curtains actually sit above it. Like it's actually really effective. The window is a big hole in your building envelope. So probably that in terms of cheap and just something that's super effective and immediate. And whether you're in a rental or a house you own, you can do a lot of that stuff. Roof insulation, definitely massive difference, massive big bang for your buck. It's an immediate thing that you notice. We actually noticed, because we did already have a little bit of insulation, even though it was patchy in the roof, the underfloor insulation actually probably had the biggest difference in terms of how you felt in the house and how the house retained the heat. Because when they were stapling in the underfloor insulation, they were like, yeah, we can see up all through your house. We can see up through the floors. And it was like, yeah, that's why it's so cold. And certainly getting rid of that ducted air, which, it's not... Certainly gas ducted is much more common in places like Victoria, and not so common up in New South Wales, but certainly replacing those old energy hungry things in the house, like putting in those wall splits versus the ducted air, was a really big change as well. Like that was immediate. But of course, you can't do that and not do insulation, because they both work in tandem. So
yeah. Okay, interesting. Brendan, and I guess it's similar for you, if someone was wanting to get off gas and they could only sort of do one thing, what would you say that they start with? If getting, obviously insulating, as Sarah said, is important, but if you actually, your biggest priority is you're wanting to get gas out of your house, what tips would you give them?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we would assess the existing appliances and see what was in the biggest need of being replacing. Often there's a trigger that gets us out to site for the first conversation. That may be the hot water's on the blink, or the cooktop's down to only one burner working because the other three have been flooded with pasta sauce over the years. there's generally a little trigger there that says let's start focusing on this first. Maybe they're coming into winter and the heating has just failed, so we're there to look at that specifically, and then we're sort of looking, all right, let's prioritize the next steps, but let's really focus on this heating now and not waste any time because the cold mornings are coming, or the cold mornings are coming and we need the hot water for the showers. So often there's an acute need that brings us to the home. Other than that, it's a little bit of personal preference really, and budgeting perhaps. The hot water might be the best place to start because perhaps there's a rebate that is accessible now that will be reducing in value in the next 6 months. So there's a few different things that can really inform what the priority is, and it really comes down to a detailed conversation and analysis of the home and the situation that the homeowner's in. We'd like to wave a magic wand on every house that we go into and say, we'll be here next week, and by the end of the week, you'll have an EV charger and solar and all electric living. But that's just not the reality of it. So prioritizing it is really important, and figuring out how to go about doing that. Not just saying, okay, you want to go all electric, let's just slap some solar on, because that's often where people think they should make their first move. I've had umpteen homeowners say to me, well, I'm not ready to get an EV yet because I don't have any solar, and I need solar to charge my EV, don't I? And so actually, no, that's a fundamental sort of mistruth there. It's not actually the case. You can just plug it into any power point and access electricity as you would for any other appliance at any time of day, and get charging your EV without solar. Solar is great because then you can prioritize your EV to charge off that solar. But it's definitely not the first step. So that's what I would say to anyone here in the webinar who's thinking, they're looking at their quotes, trying to compare oranges with apples with all the different quotes that come in for their solar. Maybe step back a minute and have a think at the consumption side of your energy use rather than the production side, because there's probably more savings to be had in making your appliances more efficient than there is in trying to use solar to then run those appliances that you're going to be changing down the track. Solar is a massive part of the equation, but it shouldn't be the first thing that homeowners think about getting on their roof when they're thinking about going all electric.
Thank you. And I think that's a fantastic point, that actually there is no necessary first step for anybody, that every house is different, and the return on investment and the savings and all those, and also all the other kind of benefits will really depend on your house and also your values. What's your priority? Are you after a comfortable home, or are you after saving money, or is it, the environmental impact? And they can vary. So appreciate that. That's obviously a very nuanced situation. So thank you for lending into that a bit. Now I'm going to start, I'm just pulling up some of the questions because obviously we want this to be a practical session.
Can I just answer a question that I saw?
Yes, please.
Somebody's just asked what my winter consumption is this year, because it is colder this year. In fact, I looked at the app this morning. We're now averaging this year 14 kilowatt hours a day. So 2 kilowatt hours more a day on average. And it is a colder winter. And we have had a few rainy days. So that's pretty good, right? It's only
That's great.
That's all right.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm going to ask a question on water. So Chris Jenkins, excuse me, just dropped my earpod. Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Sorry about that. So Chris Jenkins has commented that he's come across electricians and plumbers who can get dubious about some of the heat pump hot water units, saying they might break down in 5 years or they're expensive. And I've definitely heard of many stories of plumbers rocking up and dissuading customers out of going for an electric heat pump, which is something that here at Rewiring Australia, we advocate that people, or suggest that that's what they should entertain. So I don't know who would like to speak to that, but what's your response?
I'll jump in because I know that Brendan's going to have plenty to say on that. But as a consumer on the other end, I'd like to say the number of times in my social media accounts I've heard people say that to me and have been talked out of it. And I myself have come across it. Just bear in mind that a plumber, half their work is gas. So, of course, some of them who haven't learnt how to install a heat pump are not going to be keen to encourage you to do that because it's half their work gone, right? Like it's like, unless they're willing to, I mean, even though there's obviously loads of work in heat pumps and it's that what they know, it's quick, it's easy. And often a tradie is not going to think about, they're going to think about what's easiest for them, what they're going to make the most money out of, quickest job, done, done, done. They're not going to think about and do not care about in all, like unless you're someone like Brendan, I will clarify. They're not going to care about your ongoing energy consumption and your ongoing bills. They don't think about that. They think about that job on the spot, what's easiest for them. If you've got instantaneous gas, they've got a unit in the van, they can just swap it over right now. They know exactly how to do that. It's tougher to put in a heat pump. It's more complicated. You have to go and get a tank. You have to go and get all the bits and bobs. You got to learn about all that stuff. So it's potentially to their advantage to talk you out of it. And it's certainly not the most energy efficient way of heating your water. Our water is covered by the solar. We don't really pay for hot water anymore. That's it. It's covered. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, that's Sarah's spot on there. It's a real knowledge gap for the tradie, and it's the fear of the unknown. So if you don't know, we all know if we don't feel comfortable in a particular scenario or talking on a particular topic, we'll go back to something that we're really familiar with, and that's the path of least resistance. And as Sarah said, if the tradie's got that resistive electric or that gas instantaneous, or that they put in thousands of gas storage hot water units, they know they're going to be able to do it quickly, get on with their next job, and they're thinking about running their business in a really efficient way, and they're not thinking holistically about the homeowner and what is the best solution for the home, and considering the fact that it could save them a whole lot of money installing a highly efficient heat pump hot water system, as opposed to just whacking a simple gas one back on the wall.
And I will just add one thing. Yes, we're going to have some problems coming up, I think, with heat pumps, in that, like any rebate situation, like with the pink bats, like with other things, it has been taken advantage of in some ways by cowboys. So when you see a $33 heat pump, that's not going to end well. So in 2-3 years, we're going to have heat pumps breaking, and then I can just see right-wing media having a field day saying, see, heat pumps don't work. But really, the rebate should have only covered certain heat pumps, certain models with certain global warming potentials, the refrigerants that they use, and it should have been a certain standard. And I think they're starting to crack down on it now, but you've got those cowboys will disappear. You've spent your rebate. You can only ever use it once for that property. And then it's like, what are you going to do? Some people might put in a gas again or a, electric tank because it's cheaper, and they're like, oh, well, it's too hard. So yeah, there are issues around it. But if you get a good quality heat pump, man, you're laughing, absolutely laughing.
Yeah, I would concur there, Sarah, that there is a really big range in heat pumps that are available, and some of those cheaper ones on the market haven't done the whole industry much, good service, because they're using refrigerants that are highly polluting, or they're inefficient, or the warranties are really poor. They're not necessarily quality companies that are going to be around when things break. So but that's kind of like anything, right? Like we look at quality pays, and we shouldn't be judging the success of something by the poorest version of it. So starting to think things like at the higher end of those heat pumps, you're looking at some that have better refrigerants, better warranties, they have lower noise decibels. And so I think those factors, and I guess a good plumber or a good other sort of source point can teach someone about what are those kind of factors that you're looking for. So you're not going to end up with the one that's in the rubbish pile after a year.
Yeah.
And just what heat pump do you mind sharing what heat pump you use, Sarah, in your
Yes, I put a Reclaim
conversion
heat pump in. But our tank is actually not a Reclaim tank. I got it specifically because it's made in Victoria by the Earthworker Collective, it costs a bit more at the time. That heat pump now is probably about $1,000 cheaper than when I paid for it. But I got it because it's coal plant workers who used to work at a coal plant in Victoria who have been retrained in manufacturing to make stainless steel heat pumps that are wrapped in recycled plastic. And I thought that's worth supporting Australian workers transitioning to green jobs. So there you go.
Very good. Thank you. I'm going to go to a really tricky one. We get this a lot at Rewiring Australia, and actually I help coordinate work with some community groups, and just this week we were talking about strata. So does anyone, and I'm probably look at you, Brendan in particular, have advice for people who are in strata. So Chris White has shared that they live in a small strata block of 4 units, and they need some help convincing their owners corporations to invest in electrification, in particular EV charging. Do you know of any kind of compelling arguments to help those kind of owners corporations to invest, but also what are kind of the ways to overcome maybe those top kind of strata challenges? And we know that strata is a more challenging property to electrify than a standalone house.
Yeah, it certainly is, because you've just got more stakeholders to negotiate with, and humans are individuals. They like to have things their own way, and until their eyes can be open to the benefits of going all electric, they'll be sort of stuck in their ways, like the tradies we've just been speaking about. So the best way to start to bring about these changes is to start taking action yourself, and getting all of the information that you can, so that you've got something to present to the other stakeholders, be it the owners corporation or the other homeowners, so that when you bring it up for the first time, it's not just pie in the sky. You've really got a message that you're trying to communicate, and you've got something to give to the other homeowners to take away with them. Perhaps you've already made some changes in your home, and you can just show the evidence to them of your savings, and the benefits, the health benefits that it's brought about, the comfort benefits of having good heating and cooling. And that way you can sort of put that forward to them at the start, and not just say, oh, hey, I think everyone, we should, put solar on. And they'll say, well, how much is it going to cost? Where would it go? What condition is the roof in? Is it ready to have solar on the roof? So that you're coming armed with that great information, so it fills people with confidence that you've done your due diligence already, and they've got a starting point. There is a great Domain study, Domain, the real estate website, that they've sort of refreshed this year, that shows clear evidence that homes with energy efficiency upgrades have an increased sale value compared to their peers who do not have energy efficiency upgrades. And that could be up to, I believe it's around about 13 or 14% for a freestanding home, and 10 or 11% for a unit. So, the proof's in the pudding. People want their homes to go up in value, and this is a great way to do it. If you spend, $25,000 on redoing your kitchen, is that necessarily going to increase your home's value? Perhaps, perhaps not. There's not really much data around that. There is data around making these energy efficiency upgrades, and if you do so, up goes the property value. So that speaks to many 17%
for a house.
Wow, it's gone up again.
It's like $120,000 on a house. It's
wow,
crazy.
Like our houses needed to be any more expensive.
I know.
But people, yeah, you love it when
12%
you
for apartments.
That bit of information that your house has gone up in value, even though you have no plan of selling it, because you've got to have somewhere to live yourself.
Yeah.
But you're living more comfortably. You've got lower energy bills, and you're contributing to reducing the impact of your home's carbon footprint.
And also, you put in a new kitchen, and you don't go, when will that pay for itself? Like, you don't make that point. Like, when that Caesar stone benchtop, like, when's that going to pay for itself? It's like we look at these things that we do for our homes in this weird way, like we hold it to this standard that it should, pay for itself and be this and that. I'm like, really? Because actually it just reduces your bills. And then for the rest of its life, it saves you all this money. And it makes your home more pleasant to be in if it's heating and cooling. But we hold it to this weird standard, like, yeah, that bathtub I put in, that's definitely going to pay for itself in 3 years. Like, what?
It's such a great point, Sarah. I feel really similar about that when people only talk about this from the economic savings point of view, because I also would like to remind everyone that there's, home comfortability and there's health reasons to do this. And for me, the reason I get up in the morning is the environmental impact. So, we can put in a home battery and not necessarily think about, well, when exactly is that going to start bringing in the dollars for me? But what about when are you immediately going to start contributing to a more, positive environmental output? So
the air quality in our house, I have to make this point because it's so important. Gas stoves, 12% of childhood asthma is attributed to gas stoves. It's so bad for the occupants. We used to get really sleepy. We used to get headaches. This was from our unflue gas heater primarily, I think. Just constant snotty nose, like just one nostril just always blocked. As soon as we got gas out of the house, the air quality in the house felt better. I just was like I just felt immediately better. I can't, like, obviously I'm not
Mm.
measuring it. I'm just talking about, I mean, I'd lived in the house 12 years to that point. I could breathe better. I didn't have headaches. I didn't feel like all that stuff disappeared. It was an immediate thing. And we're doing that to ourselves all the time with gas in our homes. And we just don't think about it. Like we just accept it.
For
And
the
it's,
for those who aren't aware, those aren't just statements Sarah's making. They're backed up by Asthma Australia, Doctors for Environment, all the kind of leading health agencies. There actually is some serious, like, toxic chemicals that get released from indoor gas flumes. So there's definitely a huge reason to be protecting our living quality. Just Brendan, you and Sarah, you were talking about sort of the getting the rating of your home, and it can have a positive impact on house values. How do you go about potentially getting a star rating on your home or a scorecard? And do you think they are good measures of success at this stage? Because, I know there's lots of varying opinion on whether this is a good way that we should be going about judging our homes. Do you have a thought on, well, firstly, like, how do you do it? And also, do you advise that people go down that route? I guess that's my question.
did you want to go first, Brendan, or shall I?
I'll handball to you, Sarah. I believe you're the one with the qualification, so run
Well,
with it.
I am actually training to be a scorecard assessor, so I've got a bit of knowledge on this subject. Look, just purely from having gotten it done, and that was my Bible. Like it was basically a checklist for me to work off, and then I just worked out the order. It was incredibly invaluable, and it means that you don't. Yes, it's like a roughly $500 to get it done, but I would recommend it to anyone because you could potentially not going to make very expensive mistakes. You're not going to do something you don't necessarily need to do, or you know what I mean? Like it just opened everything up because I was like, where do I start? What do I do? Like even the word retrofit, I'd never heard that word before. But if you look up the word energy efficiency retro or retrofitting, it'll open up this whole world on Google for you. And it's like, oh, I was like green something house. I was like, I just didn't know where to begin. So, you find whoever you want. I used a company, if you're in Sydney, called Sustainability Certified. No affiliation, but they were brilliant. You make a date, they come to your house. The assessment takes probably about 2.5 hours. They're in your house. They'll have a chat to you first about what your concerns are, kind of why you've gotten them in, and then they'll go around. They'll assess all of your appliances. They only look at fixed appliances. So if you've got a bar heater there, like a radiator or something like that, they don't look at that. They only look at things that remain with the property because when people move out, obviously they would take stuff with them. And then they look at the eaves, they measure all your windows, they look in the roof to check what insulation you've got, they look under the floor to see what they've got there. So it's a really thorough assessment, and then they'll pepper you with a few questions. And then basically you put it all into the software, and then at the end of the assessment, they'll give you a star rating. And then they'll give you advice on things to do. But they actually go away, write a very comprehensive report, and then about a week later, you'll get that report with short-term, long-term solutions, low-dollar things that you could do, mid-dollar, high-dollar things. It really was so useful in going, okay, that's going to be pretty expensive, but what are the cheaper things I can do? And then advice, of course, yes, don't block up all your vents, those interior vents and stuff, unless you get gas out of the house, that sort of thing. They wouldn't recommend it. And, maybe they recognize that our air conditioner, for example, for the ducted air was 15 years old. It potentially could be upgraded. But they bear in mind that, if you were a pensioner on a fixed income, they wouldn't say go and get a battery and solar and all these things, right? They take into account the circumstances of the person. So I would always recommend it to anyone because honestly, it was the best $500 I spent. And yes, I did get a second assessment done because I was like, I'm not living with 2.9 stars. I'm not living with that. But I've put that on the front of my house. I went to Officeworks and printed that damn thing, and I got it, and it's on my board because I'm like, I'm so proud of that. And if I was to sell this house, honestly, the board on the front of the house would be 10-star home. You know what I mean? And yes, a 10-star achievement in Sydney is a lot easier to achieve than, say, in Victoria or Tasmania or Canberra. But this house is different to live in. It is completely different to live in now after living in it all those years. Now, when you turn off the air conditioner, it retains the heat for hours and hours afterwards. It's amazing.
Something Rewiring Australia thinks is to help, one of the things to help with the renter situation, because we know that that's obviously a cohort that gets left out of these decisions, is that imagine if we had mandatory energy disclosures. And so you knew what a property was and how efficient it was and how much roughly it was going to cost before you actually rented it. And that would help maybe influence
Which is, they have that in ACT, yeah? In the ACT, they actually, you have to, when you sell or when you rent a property, you have to get an assessment done, and that empowers buyers and renters. And I just think that should be national, 100%.
Absolutely.
Bare minimum.
Yeah.
And bare minimum, like in Victoria, what they're bringing in with a bare minimum of insulation and no new installations of, they're really ahead of us in terms of don't install when that gas stove dies, that's it. Let's not keep selling those gas stoves and those petrol gardening tools and all the things that are causing massive problems. Let's just start phasing them out a bit and just like encourage, if there's like 80% induction stoves on the floor there and they're excited about selling it versus, majority being gas stoves. So anyway.
I want to turn now, there's been a few questions. So we've talked a bit about home appliances and efficiency, but a lot of people here might be considering some of those bigger purchases. So batteries, solar, EVs, particularly I would say that EVs and home batteries are still kind of areas that there's people aren't sure when they should go and, is it for them? And just, Malcolm asked himself, Malcolm Medgar asked, how do you think about like EVs versus home batteries, or do you have any kind of advice on someone who's considering those kind of storage and solutions? Brendan,
yeah,
I might start with you. Thanks.
Yeah, just briefly, Anne Brain asked when our Tradie Education Hub launches, will it be available in regional Vic? Yes, it will be. Jump onto our website. There's a link in the top corner and put in your expression of interest and you'll hear about all the updates that are coming. So batteries versus EVs, should I wait until we can plug our cars back into our houses, or should I get a home battery now? Very common questions. The acute need for a battery often lies in your grid stability. So if you live in a regional area, just outside of Melbourne, we've got the Dandenong Ranges, which has very regular power outages. So trees come down in bad storms and you could be without power there at your home for many days or weeks, as we've seen over the last few years. So a battery there makes a lot more sense than a battery in downtown metropolitan Melbourne, where you may not have huge overnight power usage, and you definitely don't have those blackout potentials causing you problems. So that might bring the battery equation a bit further down the line in your decision-making matrix as to where to prioritize spending your money. So you may need to sort of reconsider with the priority of that sort of large expense. A home battery can be anywhere from sort of $7,000-8,000 up to $15,000-20,000 if you need a large amount of capacity. So making sure that you're spending that money in the right place. Don't go out and put a home battery in your inner urban home before you've changed over your ducted gas heating to reverse cycle split systems, for instance, because that money's going to be better spent making those changes first before you put your battery in. The right time to buy an EV, Sarah's the big EV advocate here, and she will tell you right now is the right time. There are so many great options out there in the market to suit your needs. A few years ago, we had a couple of Teslas and a few other vehicles getting around, and there wasn't the options available. If you look at Sarah's Instagram, she's reviewing a new car every week, it seems like. There's all these different variations on the vehicles and different applications for them, different ranges and suitabilities for your situation. So getting an EV, if you've got the capacity to do so financially, is a fantastic way to start saving money, particularly if you're putting in quite a few kilometers on the road. Because you never have to pull into the servo again to fill up. You're never conscious of what the petrol price is doing. Is it up? Is it down? Occasionally I'll peer up and go,
be quietly smug. Be smug.
That's what it's doing. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. When you hop in the morning and you're not worried about that red light being on your dash, when you're in a hurry to get the kids to school or get to your appointment, go, oh my God, I knew I should have filled up yesterday, and oh, it's a public holiday tomorrow. The price is 15 cents a litre extra. You just don't have any of those worries in your life again, because you know that your car's been filled up overnight with off-peak power at the cheapest possible rate and the cleanest possible power. It's coming from a renewable source, and away you go. So if you can, grab an EV, and
If
your
you have a
life will
driveway,
be improved.
honestly, if you have a driveway, getting an EV is an absolute no-brainer. And we have 10
Yep.
new Chinese brands coming to Australia in the next 12 months. We are going to be, it's going to be so fun. We're going to get
Yeah.
some seriously good cars, and they're going to be very well priced. So it's going
Yes.
to be.
What sort of prices have you been researching, Sarah? And maybe people might not be aware. What are some of those kind of newer, affordable EVs coming on the market?
The cheapest Australian car, it's always a bit of a battle because there's a bit of a price war going on. It's either the BYD Seal or the Aura, the GWM Aura. You can buy a brand new Aura for $36,000. And people get obsessed with range. If you have home charging and you're going to be using that primarily as a car to tool around the city, like seriously, if you worry that you're going to go, I need to drive across the Nullarbor at some point, or, you do lots of long car trips, but or say you just go to the snow like once a year, well, then just hire a car for that, because the huge amount of money that you will save in fuel would pay for a hire car and some once a year if you wanted to really desperately use it, if it's a car with a short range. But so many cars now. I mean, the Tesla Model 3 has now dropped. The refreshed one has dropped to $55,000. That's got over 500 kilometers of range. We're going to own, prices are going in one direction with electric cars, and that's down because the batteries themselves are getting cheaper and cheaper. And all of this was predicted. Certain parts of the mainstream media will tell you, because they rely upon certain car makers that don't have electric cars and the advertising dollars associated with that. They'll tell you that no one's buying them and sales are going down. That is an absolute fallacy. We are on track in Australia for 100,000 electric cars to be on Australian roads this year, which is a record. We are on track for that. Already at this time of the year, it was something like 44,000 last year. It's over 50,000 this year. So don't believe, yes, it goes like this month to month, but don't believe it. People are buying electric cars, and the people who are buying them in droves are actually, thankfully, the people who are driving the most, people who live in the outer suburbs. Those are the people buying the electric cars because they've done the numbers and it makes complete sense. So you can buy, the BYD Atto 3 is the third best-selling car. It's between that and the Seal at the moment, and that's mid-40s. So we're talking, yes, it's a lot of money, but think about it. We're creating a second-hand market as we speak, which is really exciting. So a car that's $36,000 now, or the base model 51 Excite MG4 is one of the best driver dynamic cars I've driven. It's absolutely fantastic. That's 39 grand. What's that going to be in 2-3 years? They now have introduced a 10-year warranty on the MGs. So I'm like, hello, like on the battery, 10-year warranty. It's game on.
Yeah,
It's very exciting.
It's game on. It's
I
an
can talk all
incredibly
day about
exciting
electric
space.
cars. Stop me now.
No, it's great, and I think it's wonderful to see the passion and enthusiasm, because EVs is probably the biggest impact a single household can make. If you're going to make one big decision, it's actually your car. So at Rewiring Australia, where our numbers show that you use about 60% of our household energy use, and therefore energy spending, is through our car. So what's parked in our driveways. And of course, that is an expensive upfront purchase, but you also think about the ongoing kind of cost to run those cars. It is, a really significant impact one can all make. And actually, if all of our households the faster we can all transition off petrol and diesel cars, the better we're going to be from a climate perspective, and also from our energy bills perspective. And think about all those savings that we can retain in our local economies. Right now, they're shipping one way overseas to fossil fuel based companies overseas, all the oil that we import. So it's going to be a real game changer, and it's exciting to see people already, and I'm sure many here in the chat are already on that journey. I'll take one more question before we start to wrap up, and I understand that we haven't got to all of them, and I know that's always the case, and I'm really sorry about that if your burning question wasn't answered. Caitlin is recording all the questions, and we're going to make sure that we respond to them. So maybe we could do that on Facebook or one of our social channels. So we'll inform you of how some of those other questions can get, and Brendan and Sarah might be able to help with one of them. Let's see, who would like to ask the last question? Maybe with Well, we'll keep on EVs. And just Alfred said, Sarah, is there an EV in Australia that has a boot large enough for a big dog?
Brendan,
Yeah.
the Tesla Model Y is ginormous. The boot, it's unbelievable.
Astronomical.
Yeah, Tesla Model Y is like a giant cave that you carry around with you. It's amazing. Storage galore. The Ioniq 5 has got a really good boot. That's also very, very big. Just trying to think what else. You've really caught me out on that, haven't you? Even the Atto 3's got a pretty good size boot. I mean, it's not massive. It's like a CX5 kind of thing. CX5. Yeah, just go, anyone who's interested in electric cars, and if you're on the hunt for a car, go, okay, I've got to check out my Electrify This Instagram, actually, and you can see all the cars. You can just flick through then and do all the boot and frunk checks, because I do a boot and frunk on each car that I'm doing. The frunk is the little space in the front of the car, by the way, which is, up somewhere you can store cables. But yeah, go and test drive them. It costs nothing to test drive an EV, right? So if you've got a dealership near you, just call up. Do a few in a day, because it's actually really interesting driving them back to back. It costs nothing. And I'm telling you now, you will have a stupid smile on your face every time you experience instant torque with an EV. I warn you now in advance. But it's fun, and it's just something to do. Costs nothing. But also, if you're not even ready to buy an EV now, you'll kind of see what's going on with EVs now. And then maybe when you are ready, you'll see a jump in them and see the differences, see what's going on with the tech. Maybe what's in the more expensive ones will be in the cheaper ones. So it's just get informed, get educated now. No harm in doing that. Costs nothing.
Yeah, and someone in the chat's just said that you could rent one perhaps before you buy one. So I've just we've got a bit of driving to do over here in the UK. So we've rented a Tesla Model 3 2019 long range, just a peer-to-peer lending platform. The guy dropped it off to the airport to us in Heathrow, and we're driving it all around. That's a great way to get a really good feel for it. You can take it home, plug it in. Over here, we're just running it out and plugging it into our Airbnbs and into the family homes that we're staying at. So we haven't had to stop into a supercharger yet. And we've done over 1,500 kilometers, well, in miles over here, 1,000 miles while we've been here. And we've just been trickle charging it overnight. It's been absolutely fantastic. We don't have to navigate to the service stations and work out how to use their service stations here. It's been amazing so far. So renting them, it's a great rainy day activity as well. So you got the kids at home, they're getting under your feet. You want to get out and do something, but you don't want to go and pay to go to Bounce or whatever the latest thing is, time zone. It's time zone still exists, or am I showing my age there? Just book in, go down to your local EV manufacturer, whoever's got some availability, and chuck the kids in the car and zoom around for half an hour and get them out of the house. It's fantastic. It's like going on a ride.
There's a company in Australia called EVEE. Again, no affiliation, but a massive part of their business. You actually, again, rent from real people rather than from, a hire car company. And the owner actually will talk you through the car. They'll give you a whole walkthrough. And it's just really great to hear from a person who owns the car, can really give you their perspective and really kind of give you a proper education about the car before you take it. And a huge part of their business are people who are just renting those cars for 2-3 days over a weekend, who are EV curious and planning to buy an EV, and this is their kind of last step before they decide to make that financial decision. So that's also a good thing to do.
Some great ideas. And I did notice someone in the chat mention about if you don't have off-street parking, which, I think one of the most important things that people can do is actually talk to their local council and make sure that they're investigating how do we put in more access to EV chargers where cars are parked during the daytime. So that's in workplaces, that's in, as many like shopping centres, as many kind of parking situations. The future doesn't look like a couple of fast chargers in communities. It looks like a whole bunch of slower chargers. They're readily accessible so everyone can do more grazing, charging, and, and we don't necessarily have to all be able to park it in our driveway to be charging.
That is an entire webinar in itself.
It is indeed. And we have gone down an EV rabbit hole, but thank you so much. I'm going to close the questions now. I really appreciate both those wonderful responses. I really appreciate Brendan and Sarah, you sharing your expertise and your experience, and it's been a fascinating discussion. I've really learned a lot myself. And thank you everybody who has joined us here today. It's so wonderful. We really appreciate your time and believe that, we all have the power to help bring about this energy transition. So that's within your own situation, but also it's about using your power to talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors and contacts, because the more you can help others, demystify household and vehicle electrification, the faster this will happen, so we can all build our confidence in it. So we would love you to stay connected with Rewiring Australia. We've got email lists, we've got social media. Please sign up to all those so you can stay abreast of any other events or activities that we're running. If you're in a position to support our work with a financial donation, would really value and appreciate that as a non-profit organisation. If you're in Queensland, we've got 2 in-person events coming up in September, one in Brisbane on the 17th of September and one in Gold Coast on the 18th, and we'd love to see you there. So check out our website for those details, or Caitlin might be popping the links in the chat. But otherwise, thank you again, everybody, so much. Really value you being part of this electric community, and have a wonderful day, and keep on electrifying. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.